Hi, Issa.
Hey.
Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Yes.
Um, Today we have the breath, and we were talking a little bit about the story that my mom told me. Barbara Means Adams, my Hunka mom, told me this story about how when the baby is born, and takes its first breath, then that is when the soul goes into the body, and the soul and the body come together in that moment. And so I was thinking about how the breath is also the spirit, like inspire, inspire, and expire, of course, is to the, right, expiration, inspiration. So I really love how, the breath is, it is the spirit, and the spirit is the animation for the body. So I was thinking about that, and also about the spiral and how we come in as a spiral. And it's just so interesting to think of the spiral, that our hair grows in a spiral, that the breath comes in a spiral, and there's all of these different ways that the spiral shows up in our body and in our being. And um, so I'm really excited to talk with you about the breath today, and your thoughts also about the breath, but just that it's life itself and animation.
Yeah. The
So,
breath of life.
mhm.
And that was the first time hearing that. And it takes me back to my children and
Mm,
their first breaths. And now those are precious moments, like blessings that they made it to Earthside.
yeah.
And now I don't know, sometimes, I mean, even for me, I take my breath for granted sometimes, like
Mm,
not being conscious of my breathing and or even the rhythms of it.
yeah.
Because sometimes when you're hurt or sad, angry, whatever it is, even excited, you're breathing heavily, or what,
Yeah.
or even your breath is shallow, or sometimes you hold your breath not
Yeah.
even knowing any of that. That's interesting to me, because then it's, what is your body telling you through your breath?
It's interesting because it's like you were talking about, like, holding your breath, that there's been times when you've really been holding your breath. And I was thinking about how you were talking about pain.
Yeah. Yeah. And that was crazy labor with Makai. And I was like, through the whole thing, I was, when contractions would come, I would hold my breath. And I think it was stopping like the laboring of my whole entire body to work
Mm,
together, because it was
mhm.
so painful. I was holding my breath, but they prepare you before that, with your breath, like breath exercises and stuff, and
Mm,
being mindful of your breaths. But here I was holding my breath because it was so painful.
yeah.
And it seemed as if I was to breathe through that pain, it would get worse, my breath would get worse, or the pain would get worse. And so then I was holding it, and I stopped a lot of my body from working together
Mm,
through it. And sometimes maybe that's what we do as humans when we're hurt or whatever. We don't move through it with our breath, or we're stopping things, and then we hold like our pain or our hurt, or like even like
mm,
health issues different in our body, like my back, it's
yeah.
bad. And I think maybe I hold a lot of that too in
Mm,
different areas.
mhm. Yeah. You know, um, in Chinese medicine, I was the spiritual director at Bastyr University for a really long time, and they have an acupuncture program. So I learned a lot from the students about so many things from the students, from the students who are acupuncturists. But one of the things that I learned from them is about how the lungs hold our grief. So, issues that are with the lungs or things that happen with the lungs are often related to grief. And, I just think about like when you cry and there's, you know, like there's that, just that it's like letting the rains come. It's like there's a cleansing
Right.
that happens, you know? Um, and when I remember when uh, my mom told me this. I actually don't remember this experience, but my mom told me that when I was little, I had asthma.
Mm.
And so and I had trouble breathing sometimes. And so I would just, you know, you know, um, go do that like breathing that where
Right.
you just can't catch your breath, you
Right.
know? And so, and I think about like for me, when I was really little, I think that had something to do with a lot of changes in my life when I was really young, like until I was about 5, there were just so many different kinds of changes. We moved a couple of times, and then when we moved to the Philippines, which I'm going tonight to the Philippines, I'm so excited. Oh my gosh. My first time back since I was a child. Um, I just think that was a lot of change. So probably, and I was probably grieving also some things, or maybe some family grief, but
Right.
but yeah, just something about not being able to catch your breath. Like I probably couldn't catch my breath because we moved,
Right.
you know, and of course the Philippines is I have many really beautiful memories from there, and it was a good place for me, but still all that changes. You can even grieve good things.
Right.
Like it's still a change, even if something is changing from a not good thing to, it's like we can grieve those people, places, and things. But so I just think that's interesting what you were saying about stopping the breath,
Right.
which seems like stopping the life or stopping the animation, stopping whatever's happening, the movement, and instead to like how can we there's this process that I've heard in some of the yoga classes that I go to, which is like something called a cleansing breath. And I think you were talking a little bit about it when you were talking about what Gunnar was saying
Oh
about
yeah.
the breathing that he's doing. And he's a singer too, right?
Yeah.
So, you
I
know,
have to practice that more. But
yeah,
what is it? When we breathe out, it's oxygen, and then we have stale carbon dioxide within our body. So it's really important, especially in the morning time, to release that stale carbon dioxide out. So that way we're able to flow more carbon dioxide through our body. But
hmm,
as we're like talking, I'm kind of being conscious about my breathing, but it
right.
feels like I don't practice enough. You know
Hmm,
how you are, I don't know, it just feels like not strong.
right.
Like even through my talking and stuff, I'm like, like I'm trying to like breathe through even while I'm talking, but I don't know,
Mm,
it feels like it's tight, and then I feel like a sense of like nervousness maybe even.
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
It's
Yeah.
so interesting with our breath because I really believe that we do it unconsciously, and in the morning times I do a lot of breathing just with
Mm,
my meditations in the morning. And but it's like now I want to just carry that out throughout my day,
yeah.
and being conscious of my breaths.
Yeah. I think that it's also interesting they say there's all these expressions around or idioms, around the breath, like, oh, don't hold your breath,
Right.
you know,
Right.
or, it's just interesting to, or take a deep breath, or, so I just think about like, sometimes breath means when someone says like take a deep breath, it's like courage or
Right.
backbone, or,
Right.
and then don't hold your breath. It's like, oh, don't wait for this person, place, or thing. Or, but I just think it's so interesting that this is one of the four parts of the soul, of the sikun, that the breath is one of the, we talked about the to one, or the spirit eye last week, and now we're with this, the nia, the breath, the uh, like you said, I love what you said, the breath of life.
Yeah.
And so I think that, one of the prayers that I've had a lot lately is just that everyone have clean air to breathe. Like that's something that's been a strong prayer for me, because there's all of these different beings that live here that need clean air. We all need that. Um, so I think about the breath, and I think about, what are the things that give off breath?
Yeah. Yeah.
What are the things like trees, right? So trees give that off, but it's only a small percentage of the air that we breathe that is oxygen, which I think is so interesting,
Yeah.
you know, and that the more oxygen is put into the air, the more oxygen we breathe. Like they do that in casinos, they do that in different places where they want you to stay awake. Like they
Yeah.
can manipulate the body through the breath.
Interesting.
Right? So I just think that's really interesting, just to have a clean, pure, beautiful air to breathe with the perfect, not the perfect, because nothing's perfect, but with that right amount of oxygen that really allows us to be alert and to rest, but to be fully alive as a human being.
Mm.
So what are some thoughts that you have about maybe how we could do that, or how do you think we could?
Something that came like a thought was the different types of air, are like the different environments that we smell. Like whenever we're breathing, or when we take our first breath in, especially like if you're out in the morning, you can smell like the crisp air, you know? And
Ah, that's so true.
and so then what, having clean air, that's not always the case with some of
Mhm.
our viewers.
Right.
Like I'm really blessed with where I live.
Mhm.
And
So beautiful. Oh my gosh.
and so, I'm able to have that blessing of that
Mm.
fresh air.
Yeah.
But if I go to the city, it's a little bit different.
Yeah. Yes, it is.
And that's all over the world, it's all different. So it just makes me think of even that, like, having that
Mhm.
clean oxygen, the air, your oxygen that you're bringing into your body.
Yeah.
It also makes me think about like smokers too.
Oh yeah.
Like
Oh.
how much, but even if you're in an area of that, you know how you said casinos, and it's like, oh, sometimes they allow smoking in the casinos, and it, like, I could feel the difference from my body, you
Mhm.
know? Or this past weekend we had our fair and there was a lot of dust. And
Oh,
so like I still feel congested
yeah.
from that. And that was only like a day and a half or something, but it's just different from my body compared to like it's someone else that was used to the dust or used to all this
Mm.
different I don't know, junk, I guess, going through your body.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had a hard time, and Ella, she's still all congested
Oh,
and but
yeah.
it makes me think about those kind of things and being aware of where you know, your surroundings and where you're at,
Yeah.
because that can also affect what you're breathing in, what you're
Mm.
exhaling.
We need to have friends in our house that help us breathe, a lot of plant friends.
I have I love plants. I just love them.
Like, they help us so much to breathe. And yeah, I have my friends here. So you got to make some good plant friends. Oh, someone gave me this one.
Oh,
Isn't
cute.
that beautiful? I know. Cece gave this to me the other day. I love it so much. But yeah, and they just make that oxygen.
Mhm.
We can also, something that I like to do is I like to like plant a tree for a mother on Mother's Day. So, which is another nice way to like make more oxygen or participate with
Right.
other species in making more oxygen and more air, good air to breathe. Um,
It makes me, think about the animals too, you know, like, we're working with them, but then, like, how they breathe.
yeah,
You know, you never think about them, but, I mean, they're breathing too, you know? And
yeah,
just
they,
like just like today, we went on a walk, and our dog was going with us, and he's a big old dog, and he, was just panting, you know,
I know. He's like,
and
oh my gosh, yeah.
yeah, and excited and just, you know, full of energy, and I was just, like, intrigued by the dog because just of how it was, like, breathing and, you know, and I felt the same because I was walking, and I was like, "Man," you know, like, even these animals, some of these animals need to be in shape somewhat, you know,
Yeah,
and that's of course, your breath, you have to even get your breath in shape, you know? Like, even Malia
yeah,
and Makai, they're and Baby Guns, they're running, like, cross country, and it's really hard when you're running to breathe in your nose and out your mouth, you know? There's a routine that you have to do.
hmm,
That's even with your steps, so, like, your body as it's running, you're breathing and you're exhaling, you know? You're inhale, exhale through steps, and sometimes you can't do that if you're, like, overpowering yourself, you know, and
yeah,
running faster and that can bring, like, anxiety, and then you're breathing you know, and then you're breathing too much,
yeah.
and even while you're
Yes.
moving, you have to still control your breath and, you know, control your emotions, and so it's just interesting.
Oh, that's so interesting. I think about, what you're saying about the anxiety, just, in my work, sometimes, if somebody is having that experience, I'll just say, oh, just slow down your breath.
Right,
If someone is, having a response to something or, you know, um, sometimes students, you probably experience this in your school too, just like sometimes they'll just be like, oh, I'm having anxiety about this experience or that, or, and just like how to help them find peace is often through the
right,
breath,
right.
um, but also through singing. I mean, what I found like that people can't be in a state of anxiety if they're singing. So I'm
That's
just like, oh, let's sing, or I'll just say, even just the basic things of ooh, ah, just making those sounds like, and it just regulates. It regulates the body through the breathing, and then we can return to the breath. Like that's one of the things we can return to. I found uh, that when I am not feeling myself or not feeling centered or not feeling quite like I'm myself, I can return to my breath,
Mhm,
or I can return to my heartbeat, or I can say my name out loud,
right.
you know Char Sundust, or Nape Washte, my Lakota name. So I'll just, yeah, um I'll just breathe. And even the saying of our names involves breath.
Mm,
So it's just, but that helps me go, oh yes, I remember. I
right, I
remember who I
remember where I'm
am.
at, I remember who I am.
Yes, yeah, my name. I remember my name and the name of my birthplace and the name of my, yeah, yeah. So powerful. Should I read the poem, Issa?
Yeah.
So this is Throw Yourself Like a Seed. This is by Miguel de Unamuno. And this is from the book 10 Poems to Set You Free, Roger Housden. Shake off this sadness and recover your spirit. Sluggish, you will never see the wheel of fate that brushes your heel as it turns to go by. The person who wants to live is the person in whom life is abundant. Now you are only giving food to that final pain which is slowly winding you in the nets of death. But to live is to work, and the only thing which lasts is the work. Start then, turn to the work. Throw yourself like a seed as you walk and into your own field. Don't turn your face, for that would be to turn it to death. And do not let the past weigh down your motion. Leave what's alive in the furrow and what is dead in yourself. For life does not move in the same way as a group of clouds. From your work, you will be able one day to gather yourself.
That was beautiful.
Throw yourself like a seed, Miguel de Unamuno. I really appreciate what it just this shaking off of the sadness and recovering of the spirit. Like I think the breath is one of the ways that we can recover the spirit. And I know with my loved ones too, if they're not if they're not centered, I'll just go and breathe with them. I'll just sit and breathe with like if one of the children in my life is struggling, or if my partner is, or my friend, you don't really even have to say, just to go and just sit and just to breathe and just to be with them is sometimes just, we don't have to say anything. We can just breathe.
Yeah.
You
That,
know?
with the first breath of when you enter into Earthside, it's your breath of life. And then when it's time to go to Spirit side, it's like, that's your last thing. That's your last breath. And so in between that, it's like, through that poem, that's what I was thinking. And it's like through in between your first and your last, it's like continue to keep breathing, be conscious, be aware. And I mean, if you're aware and you're conscious of your breathing, I think you're aware of where you're at, who you are. And like that's, breath is a way of life, a breath of life. So we're living.
It's a blessing.
It is. And so it's like continue to keep living and continue, your breathing. So continue, just like you said, is you always get centered. You always go back to that breath. So I personally need to be better at that, I can't just be unconsciously breathing here.
It's just like effortless effort, just effortless effort of attending to the soul, the spirit, the breathing, the inspiration.
And then what's kind of crazy too is like if you're checking, especially when you're like, oh my goodness, I'm sorry. Can you hear that sound?
No.
Okay. So, especially babies when they're sleeping, you check to see if they're
Yeah.
breathing or, Um, and if you're,
Mhm.
checking on loved ones, that's the first thing you do is if they're sleeping or whatever, you check to see if they're
Mhm.
breathing.
So true. Yeah. Are they
So yeah,
okay?
I don't know. Breath is so powerful and it really is, the way of life.
Yeah.
It'd kind of be interesting too is just to like jot down your breaths. Like if you're aware, oh, I'm breathing really heavy right now.
Oh,
Like,
yeah. That could be
why?
really cool.
Why is that?
Mhm.
Or I'm breathing shallow right now.
Oh, and to
How
explore,
come?
yeah. How
Yeah.
come?
How come? Like,
Mhm.
what are my feelings or my emotions or what's coming up right now? It might be triggers or something, and you have to work through those and breathe, like flow through with your breath, and maybe the triggers and stuff will ease up a little bit and, healing
Mhm.
obviously comes with that.
Yeah, the healing breath.
Yeah,
Yeah, the healing power of breath. We were talking about earlier. We were talking about the breath work,
right.
and there is a modality of healing that's called breath work that is very powerful. My partner has done some of that, and it's been really helpful. Like she has really loved it. She even did a class on it, and it's very powerful, and it um, actually changes the state of consciousness. It will literally change your state of consciousness. And
Mhm.
she has had some pretty profound spiritual experiences through the breath work. So I think that it's interesting because in the poem it talks about the work, turn then to the work, right?
Right.
And then the work of and it's certain patterns and certain different ways of breathing that can take you into that altered state. But yeah, we don't need any help to get to an altered state. Like our body has all the different ways to do that if we're willing to do the
Right,
work, you know?
right.
Um, yeah, so I think that's powerful. So I was thinking about this, how the breath keeps the body and the soul together. And so
Mm.
I don't know, I was just thinking about that and how, you know, we can only hold our breath so long, right? It's like, yeah, it's like when I was a kid, I would hold my breath as long as I could in the bathtub under the water, like
Yeah,
as long as I could. And then,
yeah.
and I time myself, or I'd have someone else time me, like, will you time me while I can't hold my breath?
Right, right.
It's just like, there's something called it's just like, it's interesting how we want to learn how to do it as long as we can, but we also want to make sure that, and then when you come out of the water, how it's like, the relief
Yeah.
of like taking that big breath. And so, I just was wondering about any ideas you might have for everyone about just your thoughts about how to keep the body and soul together, and any work that you find with the breath that might be helpful this week as we're
I
working with the breath.
I think for me, I'm gonna be more like my intention is to be more aware and
Hmm.
be conscious with my breathing and
Yeah,
just know that, you know, you're breathing and making sure you're inhaling and exhaling, even if you have to say that, like inhale, exhale through your
mm,
mind, 'cause I feel I do a lot of that in my meditations too, and I feel like it helps calm me a little bit,
yeah.
and it brings that peace that we were talking about, um, but it also, I think being aware of just that simple exercise of saying inhale, exhale as you're breathing,
I love that. Yeah.
especially when you're, like, in situations that of course, we don't wanna be in, like anger, sadness, whatever it is,
Mhm.
anxious, anxiety, depression, whatever. Um, Breathing with yourself, just being with yourself,
Mm.
just inhale, exhale, and I don't know, I always use my mind voice, I always use like a gentle, soothing voice
Mm.
because it's more of like me wrapping my arms
Oh,
around me,
yeah.
it's like,
Embrace, yeah.
oh, like you're doing it, you're gonna be okay. And so through
Mhm.
my voice, I try to be really loving and gentle. So, I encourage that tone of voice or that loving voice too.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Isai. I'm thinking about the box breathing.
Yeah,
Carrie and I did. Carrie did some. Gosh, it was the very beginning of me doing these talks, and Carrie and I did a couple when I was
yeah.
still doing it like Facebook Live. I think they're on the channel though, so if anyone wants to go back and look at the talks with Carrie and I, we did some on breathing and the breath and deep breathing and how to alleviate anxiety through the breath. So yeah, it was really sweet. And I also think about just belly, belly, ribs,
Oh,
chest,
yeah.
right? Like that breathing into the belly, into the ribs, into the chest, then breathing out, like out of the chest, out of the ribs, out of the belly. And, you know, um, there's also breathing out of the nose, into the nose, and then out of the mouth, like you were talking about, or just breathing in and out through the nose. Um, there's all kinds of different ways to explore the breath and to experience it. But one of the things I love a lot is to go, I breathe in love instead of air.
Oh, yeah.
And then I breathe out love instead of air. So I breathe in love instead of air. I breathe out love instead of air. Yeah. So thank you so much, Issa. And
You.
I'm so excited. And so next week, we're going to talk about Nagi, the spirit of the guardian. And so I will look forward to that conversation. And thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. See you soon. Mm.